I'm going to introduce our panelists. We'll start with Kamal Reggad, founder and CEO of MENAClick, which has Mizat, H-Mall, some of the biggest e-commerce companies in Morocco. Please join us. If you'll grab the fourth seat over there. Jean-Pierre Mondalek, GM of Uber UAE. Omar Kassem, CEO of JadoPado. And Ronaldo back on stage, CEO of Souk.com. Welcome all the gentlemen. So how many people in the audience here are in the e-commerce business in some capacity? If you raise your hands pretty high so we can see. Okay, that's about 50% of our audience is in this space, which is really interesting to see. So I wanted to start first by letting everyone introduce themselves kind of quickly. The questions that I'd like you to do, if you can keep it to 30 seconds, that would give us more time to chat. But tell us about your business in terms of, is it e-retail, marketplace, what combination of the two? Revenue or volume of sales, whatever you're willing to give. And do you do your own fulfillment? Do you own your own logistics? Do you outsource it? Do you use a third party? And we can start with you, Ronnie, and continue down the line. 30 seconds to a minute. Let's try to keep it fast.
As I said earlier, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Souk. Initially we're a marketplace. About 2 years back, we've added also first-party retail, just to make sure that our customers get the mix. A lot of our orders are managed by us and our fulfillment centers, and our marketplace sellers also can use them, but also we use quite a bit of third-party couriers such as Iyad and Aramex.
Any volume numbers that you can give us?
A lot, more than Dubai Mall.
More than Dubai Mall.
In traffic.
Okay. Omar?
Hi, so I'm Omar, I run JadoPado. So we went from retail, evolved into a marketplace that went live mid-February, so we've been live about 3 and a bit months. We're at over 1,000 merchants now. And yeah, we allow merchants to fulfill directly. We don't get involved in the process. We provide the tools, we handle payment, then we get out of the way, essentially.
You used to do fulfillment, though.
So with our retail business, we used to. Got out of it, didn't make sense after a certain point. So I guess opposite end of the spectrum to Souk.
Okay. JP.
Good afternoon, everyone. Quick question. How many of you here use Uber? Hands up. Okay. Pretty cool.
We have to be fair and ask the other question. How many people here use Kareem then?
All right.
Sorry,
cool.
I had to pull
Hey, it's fair. For those of you who don't use Uber or haven't used Uber yet, use a promo code JP100 on your first ride. First ride's on me. Very quickly, Uber is an application software company that connects two stakeholders. So we have two customers, contrary to what a lot of people think. There's the suppliers and there's the buyers. The suppliers are the drivers that drive tirelessly for you, and then you are the buyers. Today, we are connecting people to provide transportation at a tap of a button. And you've probably seen in other markets now we're experimenting with things like food, with logistics, etc. As you probably read in the papers, we fulfill over 1 million trips a day. And here in the UAE, we do thousands of trips a day.
Thousands of trips a day. Okay. Kamal?
Cool. My name is Kamal Reggad. I'm the founder and CEO of the leading e-commerce company in Morocco, MEnaClick, operating 3 websites, daily deals, online travel, and end-to-end B2C marketplace. So basically, we have zero stock, and our mission is to connect vendors with millions of potential customers throughout Morocco, and we do part of the deliveries ourselves in the main cities of Morocco.
Great. So I'll kick off my question here with, and whenever I think about marketplaces, I think, what do you have to do first if you're about to set up a marketplace? Is it the supply first, the products, the drivers, or is it the demand, getting the customers on the platform first? What's your strategy or the strategy you would advise around building a successful marketplace like that? Great. Kamal will start with us.
Sure. So, I can speak for our case. For us, we had to start with electronics. We know that electronics is the top-selling category in this sector. So basically, we started with electronics, bestsellers, and after that, we started acquiring customers. And so supply first.
So supply first.
Yeah, and we keep testing different categories and see what works, what doesn't work, and we optimize based on the return.
JP?
Same thing for us. So we've seen, and we've got data to prove this, that the more supply out on the marketplace, the lower the ETA that you see in the rider app. And the likelihood for you to request a ride goes up, the lower the ETA is. So if you want to be successful in our space, you need to have a lot of supply so that you can provide your customers with the reliability that they expect. So supply first.
Omar, you had a different perspective on this.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit different for us in the sense that because we went from retail to marketplace, we, so let's not talk about product supply, but we effectively ended up acquiring customers first and then ended up acquiring sellers after we'd had those customers essentially. Which has been, I guess a little bit different and a bit more interesting in the sense that, you're traditionally trying to build a two-way marketplace, right? If you start from scratch, which I think has its own set of challenges as such. So having customers when you could plug sellers into them has helped a lot.
Okay. Ronaldo, I'll tweak the question for you a little bit. You had an auction marketplace before, shut that down, moved into e-retail, and now moved back into marketplace. Is that right?
When actually we didn't shut the auction down, we just converted it to fixed price marketplace.
Okay.
So initially the focus was basically very little was sold online. The brands and the key distribution channel were malls. So 99% of products were sold in malls, so it was very difficult initially to get the supply from the brands and the businesses. So we said, okay, let's build the ecosystem, and as I illustrated earlier, the ecosystem of e-commerce is quite deep, right? It's not only the website, it's supply, it's content, it's customer service, he had alluded to, as well as payment and logistic. In time, retail was just kind of to make sure that we do not have gaps in the marketplace, and where quantity and buying power mattered, we actually started using. And if you see today on souk.com, the top brands such as Lenovo, Huawei, just do exclusive products just for our customers. So we've kind of moved now where we even have exclusive supply not available in the market. That said, we have the customer.
And that's because you have so much demand today, right?
So much demand. So that said, our buyers are there, and the more we offer them, we're able to just sell. And to do that, we make sure that the whole ecosystem is there to us to meet the high peaks and demands. We do huge events. We did something called White Friday last year, over, I think, 250,000 products in a day. Some just incredible number. Just imagine the logistic work you need to do to deliver these products, and we'll continue aggressively to scale. So we have a huge customer base, and for us the marketplace is a very key component to continuously make traffic, which is customers, meet product producers, which is supply.
I'm going to get back to fulfillment question because I think this is a key element. So I wanted to see, and this question maybe we'll start with you, JP, about what's the difference between product and services marketplaces. How do you see you as a service? And we really wanted the CEO of Talabat to be with us on this session. Unfortunately, he can only make it tomorrow, so you can see him then. But JP, you're the only service we have on the discussion. So
cool. So obviously, by not selling a standardized product, but you're actually selling a service, and that service provider is not your employee, we rely very heavily on the ratings that you give to that service provider at the end of each trip. So unlike my colleagues on this panel who have a product, and maybe in Ronaldo's case, he's got a unique product because of his performance, but if we're trying to sell the exact same thing, then it comes down to content, customer service, user interface, etc. But for us, it really comes down to the quality of the service. And Uber lives and dies by the rating system. And you see that also in more traditional industries like hotels, which are now relying more and more on you, on the consumer, to rate the service so that they can make the tweaks so that you keep coming back and being a loyal user.
So interesting. So for you, the service means less control, means more importance for the rating systems and reviews.
Right.
Gentlemen, you want to have thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, so from my perspective, look, I do agree with you, but I think, at the end of the day, when you've got a seller ecosystem, reviews are going to matter regardless, right? So, if you come into any platform, you're going to ask, okay, who am I going to buy from? If that seller is clearly identified, then you want to know, okay, who is the seller and what have they been reviewed? What have customers experienced previously? It becomes an important criteria to distinguish who are top great sellers versus the rest, essentially.
So I just wanted to review. Only Ronaldo and Souk do fulfillment today. Kamal, you do not do fulfillment, or you do?
We have zero stock, but we manage the We prepare the packages and we ship them under our account.
Okay, but you don't manage your own fulfillment process yourself?
No.
So for us, it's an interesting debate around fulfillment e-commerce today, globally speaking, right? We celebrated the massive success of Fab.com, of Gilt Group, and then we saw the kind of decline of Fab.com and Gilt Group. And the kind of obsession with growth over profitability that we see in e-commerce. Does this build a true sustainable e-commerce business?
I mean, look, reality is if you don't have the volumes, you're not able to be efficient, and this is a game of efficiency. Uber has so many rides, and to be efficient, they need so many drivers on the platform. My take is, on any marketplace, you have to establish a trust parameter, so the rating is a trust parameter. You have to have control at one point over the transaction. So you can depend on the rating, but actually Uber knows if the driver is late. So you use data to establish control. So rating is the kind of the customer icing on the cake, but of intangible things, but you have data, right? You know when the order was placed, when it's delivered, if the shipper ships on time, if he cancels. So we use a lot of that data. So there is what I call the quantitative and qualitative measure to establish control. The last part, and I think Uber and us and the marketplace businesses do well, is how can you aggregate things, right? So the whole concept of marketplace is you don't want to go to everyone to find everything, and you can bring everyone in. If you look at the internet, Facebook aggregates people, Uber aggregates cab drivers, we aggregate products, Google aggregates content, all these work in a way. So if you can have fragmented supply, you aggregate, you have trust established quantitatively, qualitatively, and you have control over certain parts, be it all or part. We felt like doing all. If you look at Aramex's number, Iyad said 40%, so he grew his fleet by 40. I need to grow by 200. So if I depend on Iyad to grow by 200, I'll have my days where I don't have delivery. So you get more control, you're involved in control, if you feel you want to have a good experience, which we do at Souq.
So, but I will press you on the question of why then, why the failure of Fab, not failure, that's a strong word, but I mean really we saw decline of this model of, obsession with growth.
The flash sale model, I don't think it has to do obsession with growth. If you look at JD.com, which is a retailer in China, they're at $40 billion and they did 100% growth last year, year on year. Their model is the proper model. I think the flash sale models were challenged because the model itself was challenged. We have a page, you have so many sales you can do, you're taking inventory that's end of life, you return part of it, you liquidate it, and that model just goes to a point. And then after that model becomes non-sustainable because you don't offer everything to everyone. You're not always a destination for electronics. If you go on Souq, we have 3,000 phones. Probably 300 is enough to run a retail shop, but we have 3,000 because we are the destination in the Arabic word for mobiles. We are it. You want a mobile, you should come to Souq because you'll find everything you want. So in those liquidation model, that did not happen. And since all of them scaled very fast because you're giving good discounts, customers like the selection, but when it comes to buy the bag again or the shoe again, you might find it, you won't find your brand, you'll find another brand, you might like it. There's a point where that model gets kind of, that page is full and you need to move beyond that. And a lot of them tried successfully to convert to marketplaces, Snapdeal in India as an example, and some of them just had to stick to services and got out of product, and such as I think Groupon does actually product, and so some of them just didn't scale well because their concept or the execution or the market they were in, they had to compete with general merchandisers. For us, for example, while we're not known, who knows Souq as a fashion site? We probably are the #1 fashion player in the market, but we're not a fashion site because of the traffic we have, our volume in fashion is bigger than everyone else, right? So in that model, if you have a fashion site alone, you might not scale.
Okay, so for you, it's the matter of scale to be successful.
Yeah,
Omar,
I wanted flash sale model, right?
I wanted to mention a tweet.
You said Fab. Fab is flash sale.
Yes. So Omar tweeted a tweet that I loved, and I retweeted a couple weeks back. Top line is vanity, bottom line is sanity, cash flow reality. Tell us your thoughts on this and how it pertains to the model that we're talking about, Omar.
Have I got a few minutes? Yeah, so I think it's, sorry, just to sort of interject on the fashion piece, I'm sure Namshi will sort of beg to differ on the fashion piece, but regardless.
They do 50 million a year, right? They're published numbers.
So what's your number?
Their published numbers are 50 million a year?
They are above 50 million.
Okay.
And you're about 50 million a year.
No, we're above 50
You're
million in fashion.
Ooh, a number. Okay, so anyway, look, so my view is, in the sense that, you know, if you look, so I think if we were building these e-commerce businesses in a different era, where we didn't have cheap US dollars to drive VC funding, et cetera, I think we would have driven it in a more long-term, sustainable, profitable growth model versus, you know, grow and then try to figure out the economics. And I think in certain markets, the US, India, China, where you've got mass population in, say, Turkey, for example, where you've got a mass population in a given geographical area, it can make sense if you believe in the winner-take-all model. But time and time again, whether it be the PC industry, whether it be travel, whether it be retail, you've seen businesses come and go. You know, when Emirates started 30 years ago, everyone laughed at them. You know, you had Saudi Airlines, you had MEA, you had a bunch of guys, and here was Emirates who took a wet lease from PIA and basically filled up the first aircraft to Karachi with all of their staff to say, hey, we've got a full aircraft flying out. But, you know, 30 years later, you've got a profitable growth model that scaled globally. So the question is, you know, because we've got all of this money, we're trying to drive for very, very fast growth. So, look, I don't know. I guess time will tell where it'll go. But I think, I guess our view is more lean towards trying to build a profitable model that can continue to scale over time versus perhaps going, you know, sort of full-fledged for growth or so.
Are you profitable?
No.
No.
I don't think anyone
is. Anyone on this, is anyone on this panel profitable?
We have a few markets.
You have a few markets that are profitable, but you're all running in the red. How long can we run in the red? Kamal, do you have some thoughts on this? How long can we run in the red before we actually have to be accountable to build a sustainable business? I'm pushing you guys. I'm not necessarily have a strong position on this, but would love to hear yours.
Well, actually, sure, profitability is a priority, but of course, to reach that, you need to reach a certain level of volume. And for our daily deal site, which is different concept, and at first you just invest, try to acquire as much market share as possible. You're spending too much on marketing, but at some point you just cut down your spending, and basically that's how you will become profitable. And in the marketplace, of course, you have to make margins on every transaction, and of course the margin does not cover for all the service that you provide. But if you multiply that, once you reach a certain volume, a really large volume, at that point things will be profitable.
So do you guys believe in a winner-takes-all model? Because Ronaldo's going to take all if you do. Not you, Ronaldo, because you are the winner.
There's always multi-winners in every industry. You have to have good share, right?
So I can't actually believe in that model, right? Otherwise we wouldn't be in business, right?
So you don't believe in a winner-takes-all model? Well,
not really, but in each market, you have one leading marketplace. If you think about B2C in the US, B2C, you think Amazon. If you think C2C, you think eBay. And of course, they have an advantage of being leaders. But there is space for others.
I think it comes down to your time frame as well.
Becomes like a reference.
Where do you what's your time frame essentially? What's your time horizon? Are you building a multi-generational business, or are you building sort of a 5-year exit essentially?
So JP, actually this could apply with you as well, right? So the Karim is here. You think it's sustainable in the long term to have a Karim and an Uber? Or will one must go?
Look, I think the reason why we're on such a clear mission to be all over the world and part of the reason why people like to use Uber is because you're using one app. So wherever you land around the world, we're now in 310 cities, you're using the same app, the same payment method, it's the same user experience. So that's obviously very expensive to do because you have to go and launch and create 310 marketplaces. And like I said in the beginning, you need to start by creating liquidity on the supply side, because if your ETAs are not interesting, nobody's going to transact with you. That costs money to do. And so whoever wants to come up and challenge Uber in each of those markets needs to come with a very healthy balance sheet to do that. So where we see real competition is in markets like India and in China and in the US.
Okay. I wanted to step back one step away from this conversation and talk about some of the best practices for building great marketplaces. I think Ronaldo already answered some of this question earlier, and I wanted to repeat some of his answers. So he said trust, He said data and using the data to control to some extent some of these transactions, and aggregation, so being able to bring a lot of supply and demand into one place. Do you guys add other thoughts on what it really takes to build a successful marketplace? As best practices, as insights that you've learned through your experience?
I'll take this. So you probably saw the announcement yesterday. We announced a partnership with the entertainer. So strong partnerships with other leaders in respective verticals helps Uber, for instance, acquire new users and adds value to that offering. So obviously with the entertainer, there's an intent to go somewhere to redeem that 2-for-1 offering. And in their API, you can press the Uber button and you get there. With Starwood, obviously there's an intent to travel somewhere, whether it's for business or for pleasure, and you need to go and navigate that city. And every dollar you spend on Uber, you get an SPG point. So you can imagine what that does for loyalty. So we very much piggyback on strong partnership agreements where it's a win-win for both sides.
Very interesting. Great insight. Omar, Kamal?
Sure. I mean, the most important thing is that customer experience. And for us, that is why we decided since day one, instead of letting vendors and customers interact directly, we decided to get involved and manage some logistics ourselves, and especially in a new market. We were the first marketplace, and to educate the market, you need to make sure you have a good handle on the logistics part. So whenever a customer calls, you have the exact information where the package is, has it been shipped yet or not, and you need to respond quickly by having like an efficient ERP to detect if there is a problem and where the order is, to reassure customers. And if the customer is in touch with the vendor and the vendor is not satisfied or busy with other things, he's not going to fulfill faster and will be in tough spot. And so yeah, the customer experience.
Sorry, just to add to that, I think for us, sort of going beyond the customer experience, I think it also came down to the seller experience. So, for example, how long does it take to onboard a seller? For us, to set up a store takes 2 minutes. You're in your seller tools, you understand, or hopefully understand how to use those tools and effectively how you can now translate those tools into making money for yourself. And what it means to be able to allow customers to reach out to you directly, so there's no intermediary in between. Customers can talk to you. You can message customers back. There's effectively trying to say that, yes, it's our platform, but it's your store, and essentially you're talking to your customers. So I think it was trying to say, okay, we can build a great experience for sellers, not just for customers.
Interesting. Great insights, guys. I have one more topic that I wanted to touch on quickly, and then I wanted to open the floor, questions to the floor. So, did I hear someone saying something? We're talking about, there's a lot of rumors, Souk.com is closing a $300 million round, billion-dollar valuation. Any truth or merit to this?
I got asked that question earlier, and we always say internally valuations don't matter. We're only focused on our customer experience and our service, building jobs, creating technology that enables us to create more jobs and serves more customers.
So Omar here tweeted something that the deal was closed, and then of course I was on there looking and seeing is there any news announced, but there was no news announced. Omar, what was your source?
Lots of different sources.
Lots of different sources. So does that officially make Souk the first unicorn?
Well,
maybe ask Omar.
Anyway, I'm not sure if it does, but I got you guys a T-shirt. So
thank you.
Yeah, no, seriously.
Ronnie.
What I want to say is, for every entrepreneur, if you too much focus on your valuation, and to get to the valuation, you end up giving a lot of concessions and losing focus over your overall mission, then ultimately there's going to be a point in your ecosystem that you cannot continue to scale and you'll have issues. So valuations really mean nothing, regardless of what they are. Are you growing? Are you focused on your customer? Is your service improving? If people bought on Souk, I think 2 years ago, without the capital we had raised, it was taking us 3 to 5 days with our partners to deliver to the Arab world. Today in 40 cities, we have next day. That's, for me, is what valuations can do, and that's all that matters. Whatever the value is, as long as you're, as a business, focus on your service, and your customers and the core things that I talked about in marketplaces, then you'll have a business, winner take all, winner not take all. You split with Kareem, you don't. Your customers are happy if they use you. If you know you win Jeddah and customers in Jeddah like you and they use Kareem versus Uber or Rabi, and that's fine for that business, right? So that my view is just focus on your service. I think all the talks in the newspaper about all the valuations of companies, unless they are public, they are internal between the shareholders, and it's up to the shareholders to do what they do with them.
Of course, we're not really putting you on the spot here. It was really more of a, you know.
I didn't answer. Omar said, and I don't know what deal he's talking about, but I have to call him later. Maybe he has some news for me.
Great. Do we have some questions from the audience? Oh, yes, we do.
But you know, I'm very proud that we have over 2,500 employees. I mean, if you ask me, those are jobs, right? And go to Jordan. I was there yesterday. We have a building of 4 floors. I remember we had a room in that building. I went out with the team last night, and that for me is worth billions of dollars. And they're all young engineers, and we have global companies from all over the world hiring them. And when they come to me and they said, you know, I took a job at Sue, and I was getting paid less sometimes, but what you guys taught me and what I was able to do on my own to create this marketplace is so valuable. And I think that's the room for talent. Don't underwrite the region. The region is very misrepresented abroad. We have amazing talent internally. When we lack talent, we can bring it to teach the local talents. And this model for me is what makes you go to work.
Great. We have a question from the floor.
Right. So first of all, I'd like to congratulate Omar on answering no. That's straight up gangster. I like that. On the question on profitability. My question is, I don't even remember how much money I spent with JadoPado on the products that I bought, like phones, tablets, blah, blah, blah. And you buy the product from some company and you sell it to me at a margin. How can you not make money? I mean, what's the deal here? How can you not make money of buying a product from one company and selling it to another person?
Yeah, I think as Ronaldo's pointed out, right, it's a question of scale. At a certain point, your OPEX, and if you've got CAPEX, they start to make sense. Up until that point, especially with the categories that are, so for example, if you take someone like Namshi, looking at their published numbers, you know, there's a 52% operating margin on that business. You take electronics and, you know, if you can hit 3 or 4%, you're very lucky, and that's not going to cover costs to provide a great service. So I think it's, you know, either you provide no frills and sort of get out of the way and, you know, let the customer and sort of deal with all of those pieces, or you provide a really high quality service, which is going to cost money. So that therefore, you know, you're investing in essentially, you know, hopefully trying to make money in the future, essentially.
Other questions? Gentleman in the back.
Thank you for a great panel. My name is Jatin Modi. I run a digital strategy and marketing company based out of India. And I've run e-commerce before. And you know, some of the interesting things that I've seen in e-commerce myself is in China and in India, which are pretty much the 2 biggest markets which are growing in e-commerce. In China, there is JD.com, which you mentioned, and there's 360 Buy. And there is, in India, is Snapdeal and Flipkart, and Amazon has just come in. How do, you know, the marketplaces out here value their culture? Uber has a culture of its own, which is emanating from Silicon Valley. But for the rest of the 3 of you, what value do you see in the values that you build in your team and that becoming a competitive differentiator for you? Because all of these companies that we spoke about, and Ronaldo, you spoke about Snapdeal as well, Snapdeal is very different from Flipkart with respect to culture and values. Similarly from JD.com and 360 Buy. They're extremely different companies. How do you see values and culture in itself? And how do you see it as a competitive you know, advantage?
Very interesting. So just for how do you see values, corporate values, yes, as a distinguishing or a competitive advantage?
Yes, but corporate values don't need to be the flyer on the wall, right? It has to be something which is driven inside employees and how you're engaging them and how really getting them in.
Okay, great.
As well as the marketplaces that you're operating, because the sellers are part of the culture.
Very interesting, I think. Gentlemen, who'd like to take a stab at that?
I could take one thing. In 2012, in 2011, we looked at internally of what we want to be, and we set out 6 values that we use internally. I can tell you, once we adopted those values and everything became around those values, we as a company definitely saw growth. So I agree with you that internally you have to define what your DNA is, and that becomes your advantage as a workplace where people want to come and learn and work and have fun, and depending on the value system that you put.
JP, do you believe that corporate values globally are supporting you in being able to build a business so far from headquarters?
Absolutely. So we are very far away, and we don't have a playbook that each of us are supposed to go out and execute. So HQ fully appreciates that the Middle East operates very different than, say, Southeast Asia, very different from Latin America. So what keeps it all together, what makes things Uber, is the hustle game. So when we started in August 2013, we started with nothing. We had to go and create a marketplace. A lot of my colleagues in the team came from backgrounds where they had never used SQL before and taught themselves how to query a database to understand their 2 customers, the riders and the drivers. And that's really what Uber is. It's all about hustle. It's about creating something out of nothing and using amazing technology and customer support to create a very liquid marketplace, and we just keep replicating this wherever we are. So
do you use that vocabulary internally everywhere? The hustle, what do you call it? The hustle game?
The hustle game.
Is this something like within Uber in different places?
Yeah, when we go to recruit, we say we're looking for people who will roll up their sleeves and hustle and get stuff done. And we're sometimes done is better than perfect. There are some cultures where you need to do everything perfectly, but for us, if you can just get the product out there and get it working and then work on it to be perfect, is much better than waiting and then losing that opportunity, because in our space, we feel first mover's advantage is key.
Okay. Would you like to add anything before we wrap up?
I mean, same for us. When we first started, e-commerce did not exist. So basically, when we used to hire people, we look for doers, people who are gonna come and learn, and people who are not gonna need managers. When you're a small company, you can't afford to have managers doing nothing, just supervising people. So basically, that's the culture that we have. And of course, you can't do anything without having values and. So no experience in e-commerce, and people had to gain experience on the job and without too much guidance.
Great. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Very interesting discussion. Thank you for your time. And